While on maternity leave, my guest stumbled on the idea of starting an online enamel pin shop with the intention of inspiring others. Since then, her business has received over 13,000 five-star reviews. In this episode, we discuss the intersection between understanding oneself and being an effective creative entrepreneur. Being an artist can be a heck of a ride, but you're not alone. On Journey of the Art, we tell inspiring stories of artists and chat with those who support us on this path. I'm your host, Lola Opatayo, writer, editor, singer, and all-round lover of words. Come with me on the journey. Hello there, and welcome once again to Journey of the Arts. Today, I am so excited to have on the show Rubeena Ianigro. She's an inspirational creative entrepreneur, and I'm so excited to get into this conversation. We're going to talk about what it means to be a creative entrepreneur and how you can succeed. We're going to talk about some lessons learned, some business principles, and how to balance creativity and the administrative aspects of running a business. So, welcome. Rubeena.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Okay, can you start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a creative entrepreneur?
It was very accidental. I didn't set out to become a small business owner. My brothers are on Amazon. They know how to sell things on there, and they started before me, but it looked very boring to me. So I was like, I'm not getting into e-commerce. At that time in my life, Um, I was pregnant and then had my daughter. I was a card maker, and I that was one of the hobbies that I was really obsessed with. It lasted maybe 5 years, so that shows that I was like I enjoyed it. There were so many aspects of learning for me, and through that journey, I learned about how people like it was just something I did naturally was watch people how they did things. I didn't take courses at that time. I didn't look up entrepreneurship. I didn't have mentors, but it was just from watching people sell stamps and like have launches that I learned so much.
Mm.
I didn't realize that that was happening until I started collecting enamel pins, and I realized that I have pins for card makers. And I was like, oh, I would love to make pins for myself and like my little community. And how fun would that be? And I was a social worker. I quit when I was pregnant. And then I decided that I would go back after I had my first order. Uh, so I was still applying for full time jobs and card making, raising my daughter. And then when I started collecting pins and decided to make card making pins, I was like, oh, this would be so fun to have like under like a brand name.
Mm,
And so I did like online research. I'm a millennial, so we do Google search on everything.
absolutely.
I look everything up online, like how to start a business and being mindful of the cost at that time too. So that's how I started. I created 5 very simple pins. Everything out there was really beautiful. I was a new artist. I never had illustrated before. And so I started practicing just so I could create something simple. I thought I just want something for myself that represents my passion for card making. The whole community is very obsessed with it. They make handmade cards, they give it out. There was just so much love there. And so I told everyone about it, I was so excited because I was trying something new. All my friends supported me. And I think I had started the Instagram page. And within 2 weeks, I had like 400 of my friends and community people following me. They were like telling everyone about me. So the day of my launch, it was March 19, 2019, even my brother was like, all right, let's see how this goes. It blew away my mind. I sold out for 2 of the
Wow.
pins, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" I was like, "My little pins, people like this," but like they loved it because I was so passionate about it. So it wasn't necessarily like this design's amazing, it's the best. It was just the love that went into it, my passion for it. I wasn't expecting to make a lot of money. I thought even if I broke even or had a couple of sales, that was a win for me. And so I'm so grateful to have experienced that. I don't know how to repeat that. It's just something that I think was um, such a blessing for me at that time that I wasn't like a lot of people start businesses from a place of survival. They need to make money. I can imagine how hard that is. But that's how I got started. And then from there, it just kind of gave me it felt like I could maybe try a little bit more. Try and the ideas just kept coming. So I was like, okay, let me just try a little bit more. And then I was like, maybe I'll stop. Like I still went back to work temporarily, but the ideas never stopped.
Mhm.
So then I thought there was something to it that maybe I'm here to express myself um, through this medium, which was enamel pins. But as I shared each pin, it shared my story. So that was my opportunity to share my writing, my voice, my stories, connect with people, find people. I cringe at all the designs from like the first 2 years. So I wasn't trying to be like the perfect artist or, there are a lot of pin makers out there. But if I kept thinking like I had to become the best, I probably wouldn't have kept going.
I love that. And it's one of the things that I appreciate about your story. It's the fact that you seem to enjoy the process of it. Whereas I think sometimes some of us come into it having all these high expectations. Okay, I'm going to do this and then it's going to result into that. Whereas you are just like, I'm just going to go with the flow and see how, things pan out. And I love that part of your story, the fact that you you leaned into who you are, and your passions. And it just leads me to my next question. I read an interview of yours from Shout Out Atlanta, which was written about 2 years ago. And in there, you talk about leaning towards your inner creative urge versus market research. And you mentioned that this makes your work unique and much needed. And when I read that, I was like, this sounds counterintuitive because there's a lot of information out there about jumping on trends and aligning your products and services with market research and interest. Whereas on the other hand, your enamel pins have over 13,000 five-star reviews. So you're somehow satisfying that market research or you're satisfying your customers. So then I started to ask myself, where is the balance or what's the balance between prioritizing your inner creative urge and being mindful of market research?
I think that market research does have a place. It does work. A lot of people who get into business are solving a problem. So if you really understand what problems people have or pain points, or in my case, I'm in the gifting industry, so you're helping people fill in gaps where they need gifts, But that all that came through over time, like learning over time. I had no business experience. I didn't even know, like, let's say the term direct to consumer. I would just be like, I have an online shop. So it's like I started to learn all the terms in e-commerce, all the different kinds of people teaching. A lot of them teach Amazon. I don't want to be on Amazon. So it's like understanding your values,
Mm,
understanding your capacity, understanding how you like to do things. That was important for me. I'm very much about my personal development. And so I think it worked for me because I can't ignore that urge.
mm,
I just have to try to find out and see. I There is no
mm.
guarantee.
For sure, for
That
sure.
I didn't know that I was going to create a market, but it was people resonated with my story, resonated with who I am. A lot of people, they'll launch products, share their stories, and then still not be able to really find a market for it or people buying. And so I still had to experiment. There were a lot of pins that never sold. There were a lot of, I went through a lot of different styles. I've evolved. I had version one, two, three, like you'll see it on the website. That was me being okay with experimenting, me being okay with investing money in this. And over time, I just got better and better at it. And I've been in business a little over 5 years. And in the last 1 year, I've still made a ton of mistakes, but I feel like I've collapsed time on the experience of it.
Hmm.
And now can look forward. Like I had days where I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing because I still made mistakes. So the self doubt's still there. but I know myself where I've been through so many cycles of it that I'm going to move through it. And so now I tell myself, okay, we know this is coming up. Where can I forgive myself? Where can I find the gold, the, whatever learning I could from that experience? And how can we use that to make something better? Because I know through all those years, the reviews, the feedback, the messages, I'm like, I have something here. So can I still trust myself to keep going and making it a little better at a time? So that keeps me going. And now I'm looking forward to the next 5 years where I can use that experience and, create something even better. Um, there are times where once in a while, send a survey to my audience. It's a lot easier for certain of my collections where it makes sense just to ask my audience because I have a lot of flowers in the shop, flower pins. So it makes sense. Like I've created the most popular ones, my favorite ones. What would you want to see
Mm,
next? Versus if I'm birthing a new collection that's going to come from my heart, I'm not asking anybody
yeah,
anyway
yeah.
because that for me, I want to learn through that process because there are a few things that have been close to my heart, like a collection around being a mother. Now that I have two girls, I'm like, this is really important. I want to share my experiences because I'm a brown woman, I'm an immigrant. I'm the only one in my lineage that's like a full-time worker and has kids under like 10. Like usually uh, my mom stayed home until we were in high school. So it's like I'm changing those patterns as well, those
Yeah.
expectations, um, and how people in the family see me. They're like, they all expect me to drop everything anytime the kids need me. I'm like, no, you guys can take care of
A
it.
businesswoman.
So it's like I want to create a collection
Yeah.
around that because there are people who would probably look towards me to want to change things within their lives as
Mhm.
well. And I do that through pins, stickers, and sharing my stories and my voice. Merch just comes easily to me and it's really fun. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I hope that answers that
it did.
question.
It did. I love, again, I love how you are so in tune with yourself and you're in it for the process. And again, it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I think I'm not that type of person. Like I want the results and I'm constantly weighing myself against my expectations. And so just hearing you say, this is my process and I'm a mom now and this is what I want to do. Or, maybe I'm newly married, this is what I want to do. Or I've hit this milestone in my business and this is kind of where my head's going and just submitting to the process of that creativity and really life. I find that very inspirational, and I'm so glad that you shared that balance. Sometimes you're asking questions like, "I've created this. What do you want to see next?" And sometimes you're not asking the questions because it's like I'm unraveling a part of me, and I don't need you to be a part of that process. So I really do appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
And so you've done quite a lot of, or maybe not quite a lot, but you've played in several spaces. You've done paper craft, human design, and now you're making enamel pins. And as I continue to research you, I said to myself that it seems you're constantly pivoting as you grow as an artist. And so I was wondering, how do you carry your customers or your clients through these changes in a world where, we're constantly being told to niche down and be known for one thing? How have you been able to manage
I think to answer that question, I have created separate playgrounds. So the Gray Muse has its own place. The Aura Market, which is my human design focused business, has its own place. And I'm actually in the process of, I feel like sometimes I work backwards, but it's I'd like to say I just work differently. And that the one thing I try to keep in mind is because a lot of people do want results. I want results too. I want to achieve my results. I'm very competitive in that sense, but only with myself.
that?
I have a vision and I want to make it happen. But what I've learned in the last 3, 4 years, I think since starting both brands was, and then eventually having my second kid last year, was that I cannot do it all right now. So let's
Yeah.
pace it out. Because I tried to do too many things at once. Like I created a course, I was doing mentorship, I did my first group program. I love learning. I have a Gemini stellium. So I'm always going, like, that's just
Yeah.
a no, like, that's never going to change about me. So I might as well embrace it. But what I could change is at the speed that I'm learning, the depth that I'm learning. They say that Geminis are like they want to be a jack of all trades, but don't really want to master anything. I had to shift that, and that came from the lens of human design because one of the gates that I have is gate 16, which is, and if you have the full channel, I don't have the full channel, which you would have gate 16 and 48. Uh, I only have one of them, but it's my north node.
Hmm.
And that means that's something I'm here to learn, which is that's the gate of mastery. And so when I human design initially, when people approach it, it's like they're trying to be logical about it. I had to let it sit in the background.
Hmm.
And over time, I'd hear like my intuition say, this, you have this gate and this is what you're learning. And so I started to just use that as a tool to like, where should I focus my energy? And can I try something different? Which is, can I master certain areas? And would that feel good for me? So I started going deeper in certain areas and slowing down. And I really feel like divine intervention when I had my second child, because that was the most I've ever slept in my life. Because when I got pregnant, there I just couldn't even help it. I was forced to
Yeah.
sleep for 3 months. It was just like people are trying to talk to me, and I would just fall asleep. I'm not like that. I never nap. So I had to look at that. I think everything happens for a reason, and I had to ask myself, would it be okay to slow down?
Mm.
And like nervous system is not happy with that because it's so used to going a certain way. I had to start doing more inner work and allow myself to experience new uncomfortable ways and then see where I can actually enjoy it, see where it's good for me. And I was able to slow down even more. And so I want to do a lot because I enjoy creating. I think um, I use the word artist, creator interchangeably. I think that the language of human design and astrology helped me to kind of expand my interpretation of what it means to be a creator. And I'm like, I just want to express myself through all the different ways, whether it's a podcast, writing, uh, pins, stickers, like ultimately we're just trying to share this energy that's inside us
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can get creative with that so it becomes fun. So eventually I would love to do a podcast because I can talk, as you can tell, easily. You ask me a question, I can go off on tangents. um, so the intention for the podcast would be to let's have a little bit of
Mhm.
focus because you want people to benefit from you speaking.
Yeah.
So I'll still be able to do streams of consciousness, but under certain topics. And my goal is here to impact people with my perspective and how I see things and how I do things. I was like, I've always had the audacity. I struggle internally, but that's my work to do. I'm here for personal transformation.
Mhm.
And other people see me as like, oh my God, you're such a go-getter. You do it like you're doing juggling all of these things. And I'm like, I have all this crazy stuff going on inside.
You have no idea.
And I'm constantly working. It's chaos inside. But I'm learning to manage it. I'm learning to use my tools. I'm learning to release overwhelm and struggle and find ways to see that, like there's a benefit to the process because eventually you can transmute that energy into something useful, beneficial, and helpful.
Mhm.
And I'm always like, did I even answer your question?
You
Because I
did.
don't even
You did.
remember what it
No, you
was.
did. You talk a lot about having these internal conversations with yourself. And it's almost like you're the athlete and you're your own coach. And so when you're running and trying to achieve all these things, you're your own coach telling yourself, okay, stop. Can we really achieve this? Maybe we need to rest now. Maybe we need to keep going. And it's almost like you set a structure for yourself. That really, honestly, that really comes through in everything you do. I see it on your website. I see it in the articles where you've been featured, and you've it seems to me that you've mastered the art of structuring yourself. And I think I'm still on that journey. So I find it very inspirational that you even talk about how it's time to sleep. I need to sleep now, and okay, now it's time to get up and go again. And so I wanted to talk about structure because as an entrepreneur, you want to be you do want to be creative because that's where the products come from, but you also want to be structured because people don't
Mhm.
want to deal with all of people don't want to deal with chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that the dynamic nature of artists can make creating structure a bit of a challenge for us. But you seem to have that on lockdown. And the structure in your business is so evident on your website, like just in any kind of interaction that I've had with you, I've seen that structure so evident. So I wanted to ask, what would you say has been the most important structure that you've implemented in your business?
Um, that is a hard question to answer. What I'm being shown is basically having the playground that I call my businesses. So when I started the Gray Muse, I knew I had to have a website and I knew immediately I had to build my email
Hmm.
list. So it was just something that came. I have both gifts. I have intuition and strategy within me. I have attention to detail, and I jokingly say it comes from being parentified. So, like, from my trauma of being raised too early and like helping my parents for everything. Because when we came to this country, we didn't speak English. I was 5. It took me 2 years to learn it, but my parents still don't really know English well. So, I used to do everything for them. That only started to change probably a year or two after I started my business. Before that, I was still doing a lot for them. But I think knowing that about myself, it's just something that comes naturally to me. Um, when I started to mentor other artists, I had to like look at my process even deeper to figure out like what the gaps are, um, and realize a lot of people are either really right brained or like lean towards left brain, and you just it just like you can't change that like right away. It's you have to learn new skills, and that can't that you have to invest time in that. So there are things that come naturally to me, like setting up a shop, just being able to watch people. um, and so I take action, and then from that, like it's easy for me to learn new tech things. Not always, but like sometimes I'll just outsource it. And I used to outsource from the start. If I didn't know something, I'd be like, okay, who's someone I can afford is in my budget that I can start with. But like for me, it was about getting to the outcome and making it happen that
Hmm.
I was willing to take risk. And I can take risk because I know myself. Can I live with the fact if this doesn't work out, can I be okay with that? So every time I take a risk, I always ask myself that. And I'm like, okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll be okay.
Hmm.
And that's for a lot of people don't want to take the risk because they are so invested in it working out. But I would say just having keeping things simple. So like the website, I did not have the website changed until this year. So my 5th year that I hired a web designer to fix it. For the first 5 years, it was basic enough. I focused more on beautiful photography,
Hmm.
and the website, I was like, as long as people have the information they need, like the photo, about the product, whatever was essential. And so I kept that simple. If I was trying to tackle everything at once, even the branding, I didn't finalize until last year. So one of the things I started doing in my business was, can I get this started? And then from that process, um, go after one area at a time. So like right now I'm focused on Facebook ads and email marketing
Hmm.
and optimizing those. Because I was like, okay, I have this on lockdown.
Yeah.
Can I,
Yeah.
and now I have these people coming in. Can I, optimize this area? So I think when you can focus like that, like at least for me, that because if I was trying to do it all at once, and I did try this before, trying to hire too many people at once, and I'm like, they all need stuff from you, and it was like extremely overwhelming, even though you thought. So right now, I'm very focused on refining foundations, but it's been a 2-year process. And the other aspect of that was embrace that it's going to take as long as it
Hmm.
takes. I'll tell people, yeah, I'll get this done. I'll master email marketing in 3 months. Now I'm like, no, I'm gonna master email marketing, but
What I
I don't
do.
know if it's gonna take 1 year or 5 years, but my goal. So that frees up like the expectations
Mhm.
within myself for myself, so that I'm not, because I went through these cycles of where I would say I want to do something and life gets in the way, your kids, there are seasons, and then I end up being disappointed with myself, and then I go through a period of melancholy
Mhm.
and I don't do anything, I don't take action. I'm just like, it is what it is. I'm just gonna leave everything the way it is, and I'm not tapping into the creative aspects of within myself. I'm not tapping into my resilience, just like using the lessons from that. Um, but that was the way I was learning to slow down. Because my whole life I was just like, let me take care of everyone, let me take care of everything, let me do everything. And my intuition kept telling me, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, my worth is not tied to how fast I do things, my productivity. It was for like 35 years. And I've been changing that for the last 5 years. And now I'm like getting ready to be able to talk to people about this, because so much of what is in the Western world is our identity is tied to our
Yeah.
career, our achievements, and that all of these things are great, but they don't bring that ultimate satisfaction within,
Yeah.
like being happy with yourself. It just doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. So you talk a lot about these playgrounds and how you have the Aura Market and you have the Green Use. And as you were speaking, I could relate to that as well because I also have, well, I don't call them playgrounds, but like I have these pockets of things that I like to do. And one thing that I'm accepting about myself is that I'm multidimensional. So I can be a singer this minute, I can be an editor the next, I can be a writer the next, I can be a baker. Like I just have all the different things. And when I started to realize that I have these different sides of me and maybe they need different names, a part of me started to ask if it makes me look uncoordinated, and also ask myself if you have all these pockets of things, if you have these playgrounds as you say, how do you manage all of those things? So I want to ask you that, how do you manage? I know that you did mention that you let the human design piece of it, rest for a bit so you could focus on some other things. And then between a mom and just growing in your business, I assume that you can't give it 100% on all the fronts. But how do you manage all these playgrounds without burning out? What kind of process do you have in place for that, if any?
I think when I got pregnant, I really had to look at my capacity. I think that was the lesson, the deepest lesson I had to learn was that yes, we can manifest a lot of things, but in the physical reality, we have some limitations. And
Mhm.
I had to get clear on where would I like to focus my time, my energy, uh, in this season. And so I wanted to enjoy being a mom. I wanted to spend time with my kids. And so I had to take the R market kind of like off the plate. So maybe dedicate maybe like an hour each week to it, but that's it. I realized the reason the Gray Muse is so successful is because I put my focus to it. And that is my greatest strength. That is my currency, is my focus. And so I had to be very intentional about it. But you have to get to know yourself, your capacity, where your attention is going. I still scroll every now and then. Like I like learning. I'm like that Gemini in me
Mhm.
will always be there. But it's when I simplified that, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna prioritize, spending time with my
Yeah.
kids. I'm gonna turn work off once my daughter's home from school, so that I could just be a parent, and that really helped having that, because before that I would just work random hours throughout the day whenever because I would always get ideas, and um, it taught me to get better with my time, because it's so easy to get distracted, so easy to get caught up. Like I was always on calls, had mentors, had clients. I'm like, why am I filling up my schedule all the
Yeah.
time? And so when I started to focus on where, like, if I only had that 1 year to do this, what would I want to focus on?
Mm,
And then allowing other things to just take their time. So of course it made sense to focus on the gray muse because that was where the income was coming from. And initially when the R market I couldn't give it focus, I started to feel disappointed with myself. But I'm like, I'm not superhero.
mm,
Like I can't
mm,
generate all this extra focus for the R market. It would grow if I could focus on it. Can I be okay with letting it go for now? And I contemplated selling it. It didn't work out. So I'm trying out different things where in the past year and a half, I was learning how to hire people and find people that would support me in the business that I wanted there long term. And there were so many lessons around that as well. So now what I've learned is that I could partner with someone who could help me with the R market. I've created all these beautiful things, but the gap is that I can't market them.
mm,
So I can create things, but I'm not going to be the marketer for them.
mm.
And so finding that person is going to take me time, but that's the vision I have. So that is helping me to be okay with, like, let's just take our time with that. I'll help that. I'm going to be relaunching my course. So I've found people who could support me in certain aspects that I can't dedicate time to, but I know that I've created a lot of things that would be useful to share with people, but I need help.
Mm.
Like, I need help with the launch. I need help with the copy, the sales page. So I'm taking my time, like putting in those pieces. But I learned that through trying too much before and then kind of
Mm.
learning about myself through that process, working through all the disappointment and regret or whatever the feelings I had because I thought I had failed. And then I realized that I was learning about myself. So now I know so much more about myself and I'm using that to my benefit. Like all we have is now.
Yeah.
How can all of that help me now? It
Mm.
doesn't make sense to keep being in regret because whatever you focus on expands. So if I sit there, then I'm just not going to be able to do anything new. And I want to be able to do that. And so to summarize,
Mm.
simplify, learn from the process, kind of really focus on what is within your capacity and like just take your time from there and build upon that. Because before you know it, you'll have all the things in place because you're, like you said,
Yeah.
multidimensional. There's so much that the more comfortable you get trying things, the more you'll want to do new things. And that's how you get to enjoy the journey is you're not just doing things because that's how it's been done. You're expressing yourself, you're living your life, you're connecting with people, you're impacting people. Even learning about yourself is really fun. So yeah, just kind of reframing like how fast it's supposed to happen or what it's supposed to look like. If you can change some of those thoughts, that really helps you to just like focus on
Mm.
what do I actually want to do and how can I make that happen in whatever time it takes.
I I I love that. I feel like I'm in a mentoring class right now, which is great. It's great. It's a compliment. It's great. So thank you.
I never know what's going to come through. I'm like, oh my God, stop going off on a tangent.
No, it's wonderful. I think this piece about knowing yourself as an artist and allowing yourself to grow, allowing yourself to evolve, I think it's so important because just the way that our brains work prevents us from being, those types of people who just stop and say, okay, what am I learning from this? And okay, what did I do well? Could I what can I improve on? And how can I make peace with the things that I can improve on? I think it's so important. And maybe if we live our lives understanding that everything, life is a journey, it's not a destination. And maybe if we live our lives
Mhm.
understanding that it's a journey, then we can, we can have better days and we don't feel as burdened as we feel by, our own expectations. So thank you so very much for talking about that.
Of course.
Um, and just going back to that article, I think the most important thing I read from that article is over time, this I'm quoting you, over time, I learned that these creative bursts happen in cycles. So it taught me how to allow myself to rest when I wasn't feeling inspired. And I think I've already shared this, that rest is something that I struggle with, as I often equate resting to not being productive, not being useful. And maybe that also comes from being, the first of my siblings and having to kind of raise them and be that person who is providing and doing something, and like I'm always actively doing something. And so rest feels very strange. It feels like you should not be resting. Resting is for people who have nothing to do. How can you not have anything to do? You should be doing something. So even when I'm on vacation, I'm thinking, oh, now I have time to think about all the things I want to do. So I have this, this battle with rest. And just seeing that part of the article just made me feel like, okay, you need to stop. And I know that rest is crucial because when I do rest, I see the benefits in my mind and in my body. And so I want to ask you, how have you learned this? And can you talk a little bit about your approach to rest as a creative?
So that was a 4-year process for me, and it was not easy. I I have told this story, I think, once before. And there was a mentor that I was working with. I think my daughter was around a little before she turned 2, like a month before she turned 2. So, everyone knows the toddler stage is the worst. And I was doing, at that time in my business, I was doing everything, social media. I was like, for me, I thought the more action I took, the more successful I'd be. So I still had that belief at that time that I had to struggle and I had to constantly be working. And I always wanted to work because I thought I had to learn everything. I have to learn
Yeah,
everything now. I have to figure this
yeah,
out. So, like, raising a toddler, working all the time, I was on the brink of burnout. And I had hired this person, and this was so my business gave me opportunities to start working with people. And when I get curious, I'll work with someone. So she was a top energy worker. So, like, she works with energy, the unseen. Um, and she tapped into me and she said, "You need to go stay in a hotel like tomorrow." My nervous system was like, I was shaking. I couldn't even talk to her. I was like, "What are you talking about? I cannot leave." She said, "If you do not book a hotel for tomorrow, I cannot work with you."
Oh no.
And I was terrified. And I had to, like, and this is, I mean, I could not recognize that person now, but like at that time, like I had all these so much tied to the identities I thought like of who I was, a wife, mother, daughter. My mom was helping with my child at that time. And at that time, I was like, I need permission. I need to ask them. And I was
Yeah.
shaking. I was like, I was so sure they would say no. Like, how dare you ask for one night in a hotel? But she could tell, like, I just like needed a break from everything because I was just constantly home and in my office. And right after the call, I was like, just do it. I have
Mm.
to work with her. Like, she can't leave me. And went right to my husband. And I was like, she's recommending I go to, like, I was shaking. He's like, "Oh, that would be cool." I was like,
That is not what I
okay, now I have to
expected.
ask my mom for permission. But that was the journey for
Mm.
me. But like if she hadn't asked me, I would have never thought it. I would have kept thinking it's not useful to rest. It's not okay to take a break.
Mm.
She forced me. And that's when people say, like, if you're in the energy of someone who's so confident, who's so assured, you might not be able to see it, but they collapse that time for you.
Mm.
That was the fastest way I learned, but it still took like 2 years before I got better at it. So I asked my mom, like, would you be able to watch my daughter at that time? She's like, yeah, go stay for 2, 3 days. I was like, I was like, why am I living in this little bubble in my, like, the thing with the subconscious is if you keep thinking the same thoughts,
Mm.
they're going to expand. So like there are certain, if you look at my stickers, my pins, there's certain things I say, but there's like, uh, a lot around it that I've learned. So if you keep focusing on a certain thought, it keeps expanding your thought, you create thought loops, and then it creates that feeling within you. And then that's how you spiral out of control.
Mm.
So I like to have mantras and statements that disrupt that quickly. You have to notice when it's happening and start to shift the direction of your thoughts if you want to change the feeling. So that's what was happening at that time. So it yeah, so I did that. I took 2 days off and I was like, first of all, the whole time I was like, I didn't know how to rest, but like my brain was like, okay, this wasn't that bad.
Mm.
Like they were okay with it. It ultimately took me maybe, I think, 2022, so 2 years later, where I finally had like more funds to be able to travel. I said I've never traveled when my daughter was young until she was 3 and she was in school. So when she was still home, because I felt guilty that someone had to watch her the whole day. But when she was in school, it kind of changed things for me.
Mm.
But that was another story. To put her into school, my family fought me. They're like, all the kids go to school when they're in kindergarten. Why are you putting her in school at 3? She doesn't need school. And I was like, are you watching her for me? Like, I got work to do. Oh my goodness. Like changing the dynamics within the family, like, because they would guilt trip me, they would make comments and all of that stuff. Like, I understand. But I had to change who I was. I had to focus on what I wanted and how I wanted to feel. And that took time. That took years. So whenever people say, like, I finally started to rest, girl, that was a 3-year process. But what I had noticed was, okay, so when I started traveling every month. I would do it for like only when it was necessary. So like I went for a mastermind for like 3 days. And so whenever it was business related, the family would be like, it's okay, she's going for
It makes
business.
sense.
So then
Mhm.
I started adding on. I was like, yeah, okay, it's worth it because I'm
Yeah.
doing work. Then I would add on like a day. So then the next trip was 4 days.
Mm.
Then the trip after that was 5 days. But like every month, it took me time because I had to learn to tell my body like it was okay. Nobody's mad at you.
Mm.
People are mad at me my whole life. And so, like, logically, I understand that, but I wanted to do it in a way that it felt safe for my body to adapt to those
Mm.
changes. Then I went on a trip to Denver for fun for, I think it was 9 days. And it was September, so my daughter was in school. But like by that point, my husband was the primary caretaker for her because I changed so much within. Like I started to focus on what I wanted, how I wanted my life to look, how I wanted other people to support me. And I just did nothing. I just like chilled. I ate food like 9 full days to myself. And it wasn't even local. Like I could do that locally. I went to Denver. I was like, I stayed mostly in my Airbnb because this was after COVID and things had changed. But
Yeah.
so I spent a full year traveling every year. But I took the risk to invest my money
Mm.
on myself. That
Mm.
was the other thing I was showing myself. Most people will be like, let me save it, let me invest in business mentorship. I was like, I want to do something for myself. And I survived.
Mm.
I still made money. I was okay, like I was able to pay all the bills and I did that for myself and I got what I needed from that experience. And that's how I was able to. And so I had noticed patterns on the trips too. So initially I'd be shopping all the time and eating. So I was filling myself up
Mm.
because I didn't know how to stay bored. I didn't know how to stay with myself. And then over time, after maybe like the fourth trip, I noticed that I didn't really care about stuff I bought. And then from that, I was like, okay, so the next trip I bought even less. And then over time now, I'm like, I don't need to buy anything
Mm.
because it doesn't fulfill me.
Mm.
And so then I became more intentional about the things that I owned, the things I spent money on. And even that has been a process for me since then about where my money goes. But it's like you have to learn to focus on one area at a time instead of trying to be like, I'm going to become someone who rests all the time and
Yeah.
rests really well
Yeah.
and then also saves my money. And it was like, no, 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 let's just
Yeah.
tackle one little thing at a
Yeah.
time and build from there. But I had to get used to noticing what came up when I was trying to rest, noticing what came up when I wasn't doing work. Um, and then no, knowing what to do with the energy. So like you're transmuting that energy. So then I was like, I did a lot of like thought work of my thoughts just passing through me, and that's okay. And then redirecting my thoughts. If I had ideas, I would just write it down. I was like, I don't need to act on these right now.
Mm.
This is nice idea. This is a nice idea. Let me just put it down. So I started finding ways to like channel the energy so that I was less and less restless. And now I actually, one of the things that did help was meditation, but I do it in a way where I'm just contemplating,
Mm.
where it's like deep breathing, just really, I listen to frequency music, just quiet time, and I recharge during that time. And I would notice how great I felt. And I said, I like this. So I would say it out loud. I like this. I want more of this. And that's how I got used to it. And so now I prioritize. I'm like, guys, I need my rest. I need my alone time. Rest can look different, but for me, it was whatever recharged me.
Mhm.
It was so important because by the time I wanted to create and actually be productive, um, it wasn't just like random energy here trying, slapping spaghetti on the wall, that kind of stuff. It was like, all right, this is, I know I have to do this. Know I have to go in this direction. And so it helped me to really get better about my time and notice how that rest was making my productive time even more powerful and potent. And um, it, it it just became fun because I was starting to let go of the stories. I studied hypnosis, I studied subconscious because every time there were things getting in the way, I'm like, what would help me to learn about this? How can I, get better at this? I'm not saying that everyone needs to learn about subconscious reprogramming, but just understand how the mind works will be. I think that would be a game changer for a lot of people because then they would stop believing their thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying about redefining rest. What does rest look like? Because, like I was saying, I mean, sometimes even when I'm on vacation, I'm spending that time thinking and planning and, just trying to do some other things as opposed to actually just being calm and just watching something that makes me feel calm or journaling or just reconnecting with myself. So I love that you talk about redefining rest. So as we round up, I wanted to ask you, what's one thing that you wish artists knew about starting a business?
There's a lot of things that I wish people knew. A lot of the things I've learned, I wish I knew back then too. There are things that I'm working on now. It just takes me time. Like I learn in a specific way. I don't like to watch a lot of videos. I like to just read or like listen to things on the go, like short podcasts. I think what helps is to pace yourself,
Mhm.
to get to know yourself a little bit, to get focused on what it is you actually want, and then breaking that down into really like small steps. So every step you take, what can you learn from that? Because it's like a data and analytics. Now, that is the stuff that I'm studying now. It's so helpful. In the beginning, it probably would have helped me, but I just wanted to try things. So my process was just like trying to find my style, my voice, what I wanted to focus on, what I wanted to create. I tried different kinds of products and realized I like pins and stickers. And so it's always being able to look at what you're doing and then assess it, look at it, and then refine it a little bit at a time. I think that a lot of people, I'm saying more than one thing, but it's like I see so many artists struggling because they're so attached to the outcome and the timeline of it. So when you start to release that and focus on more on the process and learning from that process and noticing how you're growing. And so when you're focused on that, you're in your mind, you're winning.
Mhm.
So then you keep going. But if you're focused on, well, I didn't achieve X, Y, Z, you're focused on that. And then in your mind, you're failing
Mhm.
and you're going to lose hope, you're going to give up, it's going to be too much or overwhelmed. So you want to find ways to reduce that overwhelm and find a way to see in what ways are you winning, progressing, moving forward, even not even moving forward, but changing and evolving. For me, like I love growth, so I have to stop looking at it as a linear timeline. And Emily McDowell is someone who teaches about this as well. She's mentioned this. She's a top greeting card. She created that greeting card company that went viral. And she teaches about this, where it's like, look at your growth as you're expanding versus, you know, like, moving forward and you achieve this and the
Yeah,
next.
yeah,
So hopefully that's
yeah.
helpful
It
to
is.
someone.
It is helpful. I find it very helpful. As somebody who is on that journey of creative entrepreneurship, and having several things that I can do and so much energy, and it's like, okay, what do I know about myself, and what does success look like? How am I defining success? And maybe I need to redefine success, and maybe success isn't what I think it is, and maybe success is understanding that I used to be this way before, but this is who I am now, and now that I know that this is who I am, I can take the next step, and so I appreciate that. So, what's one word that describes how
That's
custom?
so hard for a Gemini.
I know I want to, but you have to try. So, what's one word that describes how customers feel about your work?
Joyful,
Wonderful. And what's one word that describes how you feel about being an artist?
grateful.
Awesome. That is a wonderful way to end the show. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Rubeena. I am so glad that you came on the show today. I feel I feel like I just had a therapy session. Like so many things hit several points in my mind. I will listen to this over and over and over again, especially at those times when I'm demanding so much of myself. So thank you very much for sharing
Of
your heart,
course.
and I wish you all the very best in your
Thank you.
creative
Thank you so much
endeavors.
for having me.
You're welcome. On the next episode, I'll be chatting with another inspiring artist. But before then, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this show and this episode. Feel free to drop me a note here or send me a DM on Instagram at Journey of the Art Pod. Finally, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or follow and rate the show if you're listening elsewhere. Help me connect with other artists who need a dose of inspiration today. Until next time, stay on the journey of your art.